Hello and welcome to the Grid Slot Gavra Racing podcast. You're joined by Tucson 0208, myself.
Me, Tiger Assassin.
And me, ex Natty G.
And what we're aiming to do here with this podcast is provide everyone with a bit of escapism during this difficult time for all of us. This podcast will be weekly, starting on a Monday. We hope to get every episode out by Monday. It will focus primarily on Gavra Racing because that is the point of this podcast, get the word out about all the races we have here, all the events, get some drivers in and stuff like that. That will be happening from episode 2, I can confirm. You'll have to wait to see the special guest, obviously. And we are going to kick things off straight away with what happened in Gavra Racing this week. So, moving on to our first story. Natty, what was your favourite race from last week?
I'd say my favourite race, freshman league race at Belgium was probably my favourite race. We had quite a lot of overtakes, a lot of crashes, and a few safety cars. So yeah, different strategies as well with the Ferrari driver trying to stay out on those medium tyres.
Yeah, obviously, Belgium, Spa, very, very technical track. They're very tough for all the drivers to get right, 22 times in a row. What about you, Tiger Assassin? I hope you have a different answer to Natty.
I'm sorry, but I think it's gonna have to be the same. It was an outstanding race. Watching all the drama happening, and especially some of the crashes that happened. There was some huge like events that happened during that race, and yeah, it's the one that stood out for me as well in that week of racing.
Yeah, now obviously there were some crashes in that race that had some quite big implications on the championship in the freshman league. But before we get to that crash, obviously there was quite a large incident behind the safety car there with Uvex Natty, and I believe some lag was involved. So from your perspective, what happened there?
So I was driving, as you do, quite casually, going up Eau Rouge, and then bit of lag. My car was like rubber banding forward and backwards, and then after I rewatched the video, slowed it all down, I lagged in front of the safety car, and then unghosted. The safety car's hit the rear of my car, and then my left rear's blown up, and then out of the race from P2. Yeah, it's pretty unfortunate.
I mean, I think me and Tiger have to slightly apologise for that one there because we gave you a bit of a commentator's curse.
Yeah, we did a bit.
I think the second that I started talking about how the Williamses were in very good positions, I just looked on my
Williams
screen.
Williams 1-2.
Yeah, exactly. And I looked on my screen. There's a Williams mounted on its rear right wheel there. So, yeah, it's a very unfortunate incident there.
We were all very confused. I mean, we were sat there, and we were sat there, and the safety car was perfectly normal, and usually nothing happens in the safety car. And then suddenly you were in the air, and then you spun around, and then you were out of the race. It was just, to us, to me and Toussaint, it was mind-boggling. And what happened?
It was tragic.
I think I literally remarked on this on the stream there, what manner of thing has happened here?
Yeah. That's the exact words you used. It was a good set of words to use. It was a very, very important moment in the race, and it allowed some other people to get podiums actually due to that. So,
well, yeah, that's true, and obviously possibly not even the most shocking moment of the race there, because Pepelec, who has had before we go on, Pepelec has had incredible qualifying pace. I think you can all agree on that.
Incredible, yeah, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, exactly. But in the race, he seems to either fall off the cliff with the tires or something like that, or he just gets bad luck in wheel-to-wheel racing.
I think maybe like a lot of the drivers do, they try to push too hard. Like they try to go for like an aggressive racing, when sometimes that isn't the case. Like sometimes they maybe need to, take it back for a few laps, go as you are, and then kind of push when needs be. So maybe he's just having trouble trying to find that balance between, pushing for that sort of those positions. And then, or it could be maybe he's getting quite unlucky as well, but could be one of the reasons why he's not having as much luck in the races as he is in qualifying.
Yeah, I'd largely agree with that. What about you, Natty?
I'd say consistency during the race is obviously key. It's a long race, some races are quite 45, 50 minutes sometimes. So I feel like if you can qualify up there, it's best just to stay up there. If you lose a few positions, don't go too aggressive all the time. Just try and be consistent, and then hopefully he'll get a good result.
Yeah, some words of advice there from ex-Natty, who is now a race winner in Gavra racing, might I just add. So
Thank you.
wasting a long time for that one.
First win in Austria as well. Like I remember Toussaint's reaction. It was and it was something as he came flying around that final corner and went across the line. You won. It was with quite a reaction up in the commentary box.
I just couldn't believe he'd actually done it.
Yeah, 2 disconnects. That ain't stopping me.
Yeah, exactly. So, obviously, continuing with our Pepelec theme, well, it's not going to be all about Pepelec, we promise. But obviously, there's added controversy during the Belgian Grand Prix for the Freshman Series when Pepelec and Holland Campion came together at the final corner of the Nouvelle Chicane. From my perspective, because I was actually riding on board with Holland Campion at the time, because obviously, as all the commentators who do F1 2019 will know, the camera angles that the game chooses are sometimes very, very bad. But obviously, when I was on board with Holland Campion, what it looked like was he came off the right-hander, and he may have had a run on Pepelec, but Pepelec came over too much on him. And so once he'd hit the right front of the Red Bull behind, he just speared off into the Armco barriers there, and there's nothing much that either of them could do to save the situation. I think from the stream it looks a little bit different. Maybe Holland Campion wasn't.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I was gonna say like it was actually an extraordinary crash to look at. It was almost it was very realistic. I have to admit, like the way he hit the wall and the way his tire came off and the suspension failed as well. It was quite a remarkable crash as well, and it shows how like the actual game itself isn't far off what it is in real life. But it was from the angle that I had, it seemed like as they came down that DRS straight into those couple of corners there through that chicane, it was more of a coming together as they were wheel to wheel, and it did look like Campion maybe could have given him a little bit more space on the outside as he came round, but it was tight to call. So it'd be interesting to see how the stewards deal with it and what how their angles were on the crash. So it'd be interesting to see.
Now, obviously, also continuing with our Pepelec theme once again.
Pepelec getting all the headlines.
Yeah, I know he's making headlines in Gavra Racing. It's his rookie season as well. Once again, I promise it won't be all about Pepelec, but he did also possibly incur the wrath of the stewards earlier on during the race weekend, where during qualifying he went out on track despite having a LLP2, I believe it was, which meant that he couldn't go out until the last 5 minutes of qualifying. But he was out on track and did set a lap time early on. Ex-Natty, though, might be able to shed some light on the subject for why that possibly was.
So I'm not sure why he would go out on track, but yeah, obviously with an LLP2, if it was an LLP2, I think 5 minutes at the end of the session, so that could have given him the advantage. Like if, let's say, for example, if it was dry for the start of qualifying, but then turned out to be wet for the end, then that could have given him a major advantage. But yeah.
Maybe was there enough communication between him? Like, was he given enough information to be told you've got this LLP2, you need to like come out just before like 5 minutes at the end of the qualifying session? Like, what was the communication like between drivers? And because Nat, you would know since you are both of you would know actually. Do you know what the communication is like with penalties?
I'll let Natty answer.
I'm not sure how many drivers check the championships on the website, but all the penalties are often put on the websites in your league, and it shows you what LLP you've got. I'm not sure if it was told like directly before the race, but
as all drivers should really familiarize themselves with the Gavra Racing website.
Yeah.
Gavra Novic does put a lot of effort into to put up for everybody. As we also don't just focus on the F1 2019 stuff here. We do have other championships running as well, such as the Project Cars. On Project Cars 2, we have a lot of championships running. Currently, the GT3, Project Cars 2 Academy, Ginetta Evo, championship, and the Ferrari 333 SP. If I can get that out properly, all had races
There's
this
a bit of
week.
a tongue twister, that one, isn't it? The
Yeah, 333 SP. As I believe Champs is currently leading the championship in that one. I believe he also won the most recent race in Mugello. A very nice track to drive, that one, actually. I really enjoy it. It's a lot of medium and high speed corners, which I personally like myself. I love those high downforce corners with high downforce cars. And the genetic evolution race, which I actually think is a very interesting way of doing a championship. So what happens is, after each leg, and there are 4 legs in the championship, the cars change. So they started, I believe, with a Ginetta GT4 car for the first 4 rounds, then moved to a GT3 car for the next 4. And I believe it's going to, there's 2 more leagues left. I'm not too sure what they're on now, but I know for the end there's going to be a Ginetta LMP3 car that they're going to be using. I'm certain of that, more or less.
That's
And
quite interesting. That, actually, I didn't know they did that. To be honest with you, I thought it was just one car, but that's actually a good way of running a race, because it challenges the drivers like each week to change up how they race for the for the likes of like the different cars and how they drive differently to other cars. So
yeah, exactly. And in that race, quite a large grid for our Project Cars 2 people there. There's also in the Project Cars 2 Academy. So for those of you who aren't familiar with how Gavra Racing works, there is the Academy series where all fresh new drivers who just joined the league can go and race amongst people like themselves who have just joined the league. They prove themselves in that academy, and then they receive a license to go and participate in other Gavra Racing championships. And so obviously, if we believe there were two rounds that were held at Alton Park, the first of which was won by Deck Point 2, and the second by, I'm going to say that, Brunon Kolev, I believe. And to and to continue with our Project Cars 2 conversation, the GT3 Championship has also been running this year. It is in its 3rd leg, I believe, with points being collected after each leg, which helps decide the championship. And that racing is a lot like what we have on Gran Turismo Sport at the moment, which is another kind of GT3 league. Obviously, Gran Turismo Sport has a lot more concept cars and stuff like that than Project Cars 2 does. Project Cars 2 obviously more of a hardcore, realistic sim there, but it just shows the diversity of racing that we have available to drivers here at Gavra Racing. And also, we were all involved in the Gran Turismo Sport race that happened last Thursday, I believe it was, Tiger?
it was, yeah. I mean, Natty would
Yeah,
know as well.
Yeah.
that you would know as well, as the lead commentator in that series. But we'll get to my thoughts on the race later on, because yeah, we'll go to Tiger Assassin first. So, how was your driving experience with Gran Turismo Sport?
Sorry, well, I completely zoned out there. Can't say that again. Sorry, I completely zoned out.
That's going on the bloopers. So the question was,
I completely zoned out.
so the question was, how was your driving experience on Gran Turismo Sport in the championship?
To be honest, I have really enjoyed. For me, I'm better on Gran Turismo than I am on F1, which would seem weird, but I think it's just the way Gran Turismo like drives everything. I think it just suits me better. But yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I'm looking forward to the other races. And I only race on the controller, or the pad, as some people call it. But I'm going to try and use the motion sensor on it to see if I can maybe get a little bit more speed out the car than I did in that race, because I was only down in 7th, which I was disappointed, but I was happy at the same time, because I did get a good amount of points, but not enough as I was wanting.
I think my race in a bit of an opposite one to Tigers there, not to be too rude. As as my race started, I was on pole position. I was leading most of the race, and then I believe a crash happened, which allowed the other Mercedes in the race of Duke underscore SL64, or as I like to call him, Satan, to come past me and take the lead of the race. I then, but because earlier on in the race I'd made a mistake, I thought we had to choose 2 different compounds of tire when we didn't. I pitted for the super soft tire, which is the grippiest tire that you can have. I was trying to chase him down, but traffic and everything like that, and I'm not trying to make excuses. I know it sounds like it, but at the end of the day, it was my fault. So it's a good race though, a very good race. It's very tense. The battle between the two at the front and the clumps of cars that we had, battling all up and down the midfield. I think
I
will
had
be
quite a
more.
battle. I was in a battle with between three people at one point. There was me, someone else, and then someone else. But I managed to somehow find some extraordinary pace at the end because I pitted for a new set of super softs and gave myself just enough fuel to go to the end of the race in mode one. So I managed to find myself some extraordinary pace and made 2 overtakes in the last 10 minutes of the race, which got me my 7th position. So I was quite happy with that.
Yes, I think obviously Ex Natty is a commentator for that kind of the all-seer over what happened in that
Yeah.
race. You remember what
The
the action was, I
overseer.
think.
Really
I
early
think
on. Yeah, really early on, we had three-way battle for 5th place, I think it was. We had GJ, Joe Black, and Borwy all going at it, and then that ended quite suddenly with a collision, and then pit stops, and the different strategies changed that little battle.
and
And
yeah, I mean the thing about Gran Turismo Sport with the Group 3 cars is obviously there's no DRS or anything like that with Formula One to make overtaking a little bit easier. So it's very challenging to make overtakes on
yeah,
Gran Turismo Sport, but it means you get the build up of the tension before the overtake actually happens, where that you're trading fastest laps. The guy behind you gains like 2/10 lap. You're like, oh no, I gotta gain more time now, and it forces you to push the car. I feel like more when F1 does, because that if, I'll just stick behind him for for most of the lap, and you'll get DRS and be able to fly past him once again.
definitely, yeah.
But obviously, we don't also only run Gran Turismo Sport leagues here on Gavra Racing. We also recently had the addition of a Dirt Rally Championship, which is run by one of my good friends, One Shoot Two Down. So please go and check him out on PSN. I'm sure he'll be more than willing to get you involved in the next championship of the Gavra Racing Dirt Rally Championship there. But an incredible 39 drivers
That's a
have joined
lot
that
of
series.
drivers.
Yeah,
To be honest, that's probably helped by the fact that it came up free for PlayStation Plus, didn't it?
yeah,
Um,
that's true.
but I can imagine a lot of people who would enjoy it because there's not many rally leagues out there like on consoles. To be honest, it's all really mainly like obviously said GT Sport and the F1 leagues and any other racing games that there are. It's usually just them. So there's not really many rally leagues in that I've seen anyway in certain different leagues. So that's probably why it's so popular.
I couldn't quite believe when I saw how many people signed up for that. I was considering doing it, but I downloaded the game after about
I,
2 days.
I
It was on
couldn't
the
get the
PSN
handle on
store.
it.
Yeah, me neither. I don't know if you tried it, Nasty.
No, I haven't been on the Dirt Rally game
No,
as
okay.
of
Well,
yet.
you should you should try it. It's fun, but it can get quite frustrating.
I think what it is it's very very realistic. Like that's what makes it for probably most people very enjoyable. For me, I really couldn't get my grips around it. Like to me, the rally and it's not my main interest. I'm more interested in F1 and that kind of that racing. So I couldn't really get my head around it. But for people who are interested in rallying, it's a very very realistic and very good game to go check out.
Mm. As now we enter the section of looking forward to what's happening this week when the podcast goes out, but hopefully next week when it's meant to go out normally. There's a bit of confusion yesterday, that's why this one might be a bit late. So looking forward to this week in Gavra Racing. Obviously, at the time of recording, none of the races this week have happened. So today, in about 3.5 hours, which I need to go prepare for, we have the Premier Series race in Mexico, which could see a potential championship decider, as could the Super League tomorrow at 8:30. Both races happen at the same time. And then later on in the week, we have the repetition of all of the aforementioned Project Cars 2 leagues that are happening this week. Obviously, last week there was no Premier Series or Super League events, as it was break week for us lot. And I believe that's it, except for the GT Sport League, which happens on Thursday, which me and Tiger both need to do a lot of practice for because we haven't started yet. But we'll keep that one between us, yeah. So Yeah, so that's all of the stuff that's happening this week. Title permutations, though, which I have spent much time calculating. So
Too much time, I
if
think.
if my maths is wrong, I apologize. I'm sure you guys will correct me in the comments if I was wrong or are wrong. But from my understanding, what has to happen this evening for me to win the championship in the Premier Series. So if you haven't seen that series, please go watch it. I'm currently winning it and could win it, so please. I need to finish fourth or better to win the championship, with my championship rival Shankster 11 outside of the points. So I need that
I'm
point
expecting some
gap.
sort of trophy or something.
Oh, I'm expecting Gavra to send me like a trophy made of like pure diamonds if I win the Premier.
Just a diamond trophy. Where's he getting that budget from?
He'll make it happen.
Trophy.
He's
Make it
a man
happen.
of many talents. Gavra 91. There's a lot of stuff around for our community, so we can go racing. And in the Super League, again, another very closely contested league. Play Duchy can win the championship if he finishes 7th or above, with his championship rivals Attengren and Pierre, I believe, outside of the points. So Play Duchy must finish at least 7th to win the championship. And that concludes the Gavra Racing segment of our little podcast here, as now we go into the realm of real world racing. As obviously we're looking forward to next week with Gavra Racing stuff, looking forward to the rest of 2020. There's a segue for you, for the F1 season to eventually start. But before we went into lockdown, obviously, we did have F1 testing. And at that test, Mercedes revealed the DAS system. So can you explain a little bit about what the DAS system is and how it works for us, Tiger?
Well, the DAS system. Okay, so it's a complicated system to get your head around, obviously, when you first learn it, but it's actually quite simple. It's to increase corner speed and actually straight line speed. So the default way the front tires are laid out on a normal F1 car is they are like slightly 5 degrees, I think it's 5 or 10 degrees outwards, facing outwards, so they can basically take better cornering. So the car follows nicely through all the apexes and takes the corners very nicely. But what Mercedes did was they thought, well, on the straights, if the wheels are going facing outwards, not facing forwards, so there's friction, which is slowing the car down, and you're also getting tire wear. So they thought, well, what if we can change it so it goes straight on the straight, and then it can go turn outwards, so then we can get speed through the corners, and that's what they did. They made a system which allowed the steering column to connect to the axle, and then when the wheel was pulled outwards on the straight, the wheels would go straight. So they would increase the straight line speed. There would be less tire wear and less friction, so the tires would last longer. But then the driver could actually push the wheel in on the corners to then make the tires move outwards, so then they could get also the better cornering. So it was a very interesting system, but now has been banned because it was apparently it was improving their time and testing by about 5 tenths, I believe. It was something ridiculous like that. So I think it's been banned for next season, which is interesting.
Yes, obviously banned for next season in 2021, despite the regulations being pushed to 2022 now, I believe, for the new cars. But with the races that seem to be left on the 2020 calendar, ex-Natty, what tracks do you see Mercedes having an advantage from with that DAS system?
I think the biggest track that they could get the biggest advantage from would probably be Silverstone. Thinking about it, if it does go ahead, because obviously Silverstone, you've got like quite a few straights, but also a lot of high speed corners. You've got Cops, Maggots, and Beckett's. A few tire wear can be quite tricky on Silverstone, so I think Mercedes have got a really good system for that track. I think that track will definitely be one of the top tracks that will help them out in the race.
I think also if we're talking about tracks that are high speed, we can't help but mention Monza as well. Obviously, with the decreased scrubbing from the ability to pull in the front tires like that, with the higher top end speed, you will assume that they'd have a minuscule but sizable advantage,
Yeah.
if that makes
I
sense,
think
over
I
the
think
rest of
it
the
I
field.
think it's what it is it brings up like a few tenths per sector, which in F1 that I mean in real life that doesn't like in just the general world like a few tenths of a second is nothing, but in Formula One that is a big difference in time. Like it's incredible how close those cars are in time between each other. So that they're making up tenths and tenths between sectors is a huge thing. And going back to Silverstone as well, that probably would be their strongest track because they probably would have tested their car at Silverstone because that's where they usually test most of their cars because their factory is only about 10 minutes down the road, I believe. So that's usually where they test all of their cars anyway, all the F1 cars. So
Yes, a very interesting insight there from you two. Thank you for that one. And obviously, with the current situation, I don't know if we can mention a name on YouTube or not at the moment, but just to ensure that we don't run into any
the
issues, I
disgusting
won't.
thing, the
Yes.
horrible thing.
Yeah, exactly. We'll just call it that. As it looks like the F1 2020 season will start from Austria, at least that's what they're aiming for. And I believe the
Hmm. I
Italian Grand Prix has had a confirmed date of, I think, the 27th of September, or that
Yeah,
might be incorrect. But with a shortened season, obviously, this season between 15 and 18 races instead of the usual 22, which is a record breaking amount that we were supposed to have this year. But with a
it was the
shortened
new Dutch and
season,
Vietnam Grand Prix, wasn't it? Sorry, but no, it was
yeah,
the Dutch and Vietnam Grand Prix. The new brand two. Well, one of them was the track coming back, but the other one was one brand new track, which looked very, very, very exciting. I was really looking forward to that track.
yeah, I was looking forward to Vietnam being on the calendar as well. I think obviously it will still be in the F1 2020 game. So I think once we get all the drivers who participate in the F1 championships, come together, we've got our setups done and everything. The grid is organized. I really hope that we can have that track on the calendar once the game comes out. Obviously, as the shortened season probably will have quite a large effect on the championship. Each race will count for more than it usually does. So who's going to be champion, boys? I'll throw X Natty
Oh,
at the deep end here.
I reckon Lewis has probably got it this year with the new. I want to say one of the Ferrari boys. I want to say a Ferrari driver, but I think the new the new DAS system will definitely give Mercedes a huge advantage, and I just think Lewis is on top of his game right now.
Yeah, he is. I'm a
I
Lewis
probably,
supporter. Sorry.
I think I am also a Hamilton supporter, so please don't click off the podcast if you're not.
There's nothing wrong
I
with
believe,
Hamilton. I don't know why people hate, but carry on, please.
yeah, I think because obviously the DAS system is a very new thing. We've never seen it before in Formula One like history, like ever. To be honest with you, but
Yeah.
I also personally not of the opinion it's going to be like this massive silver bullet, which will is back to 2014 levels of
No, no.
domination by Mercedes. But I still think that Lewis will edge it, but it will be a lot closer. I think the tracks that are left, especially Austria. Austria last year was a massive bogey track for Mercedes. It has been since
It's a
20 well
Red
for the
Bull
last two
track, that
years.
one.
Well, it is literally a Red Bull track as
Yeah, it
well.
literally is.
Yeah.
I believe the tracks that are left are still ones that have been problematic for Mercedes, but equally so for the other cars as well. With Ferrari having to scale back, what looks like having to scale back their straight line speed advantage, they might not be as overpowered in Monza, and potentially might be better around tracks such as Singapore, which already last year they were very good on. Finally got that front end stability sorted out with the upgrades they brought to that race. But I mean, if we're moving on from who's going to be the world champion, who's going to be the worst driver out of the big guns? Do you guys think? I fixed on X Natty's for last time, so I'll go to Tiger Assassin. So who will finish sixth in the championship, or worst out of the lead three teams?
I mean, ooh, it's interesting because so you on about Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull here, yeah. So
Yeah,
it's interesting because I think Verstappen's got potential. Like Verstappen's a very good driver. Like he's showing even with the problems that, I mean, Red Bull didn't have problems, but you could see the difference in pace between the Renault and the Honda engine. And I mean, the Honda engine has done very, very well. If you noticed it from what it was in the McLaren, it was something that no one should ever speak about ever again. But what it's done in the Toro Rosso, which is now AlphaTauri, and the Red Bull, it's done a very good job. But you can see the pace that Verstappen has. But personally, I think it could be if Albon stays, which I think is Albon staying at Red Bull. He is,
Yeah,
isn't he?
I think that's confirmed for this year.
I think it might be Albon. But he's a talented driver. I mean, he got in there, didn't he? Because of Pierre Gasly. Because Pierre Gasly they changed halfway through the season, and that's a whole different of a subject to talk about. But Albon, obviously, he's in there for a reason, but I don't think he's up to scratch as the likes of, because Leclerc has shown he has a lot of pace. Obviously, Vettel, 4-time world champion. But I mean, Bottas is an interesting one because Bottas hasn't got the statistics to say that he can do it, but I think the car helps him. I'm not saying he's a bad driver, but I believe that I believe he is helped. I think all the drivers are helped by their car, but I think do you know what I mean? Like it's interesting. It's interesting, but I think for me, I think Albon is probably out of all of them the weakest link.
Oh, you're the weakest link. Goodbye. I don't know about you, Natty, but I feel like personally that the thing that swayed me on Albon was the Brazilian Grand Prix last year. I think he really showed in that race that he can go toe to toe with the big guns in Formula One, the likes of Sebastian Vettel, that incredible move around the outside after the safety car. So for me personally, I think Albon will build on that. I think already from testing, you saw when he was in interviews and stuff like that, he was a lot more confident, a lot more like forthcoming. I feel like he's growing as a driver. As last year, it was like, oh well, I got saved from going to Formula E. Now I'm in Formula One. Let's see what I could do. I think now he thinks that he belongs in the sport, which is why I don't think he'll be the weakest link. I think it will be Sebastian Vettel. I don't have too high hopes.
You've persuaded me now.
We've got changing opinions already. I personally think that it will be Sebastian Vettel. He's a down. I'd say a downturn in form that's probably lasted since.
I'm not saying Albon's a bad driver. I'm not saying a bad driver. It's interesting because Vettel, I believe, I don't know. He's dropped in his performance as what he was when he was back at Red Bull. Ever since he's come to Ferrari, he hasn't been as well performed as he has been. I mean, he had that season with Hamilton where he was close. He was winning those races, and then the season after, it really just didn't go well for Ferrari at all. So it is interesting. It's a close call.
I think that personally, Vettel, even though he had an upturn in inverted commas in performance in the latter half of the season, I think it might not even be enough for Ferrari to reconsider him for the new cars in 2022, which could see a shake-up in the driver lineups from the top teams. But that's also another subject. I'm going to move on to Ex-Natty now, who obviously will give his 10 cents about who he thinks is the weakest link out of the tops, or the assumed top 6 drivers on the grid, assuming that Racing Point or Tracing Point, as they've been rather cheekily dubbed, won't cause an upset amongst the top 3 teams. So to you, Ex-Natty.
I think the thing that separates Sebastian Vettel and Alex Albon is obviously their experience. You've got Alex Albon's, this is his rookie season, and Sebastian Vettel's been in many, many seasons. I think this is his 12th or 13th year. 4-time world champion. I do want to see Vettel winning again, but I'm not sure he's the lead Ferrari driver at the moment. But I think based on last season, I want to say Albon's probably the weakest out of the 6, only because of his lack of experience, you could say. He spent the first half of the season in the Toro Rosso fighting for points, just to get in the top 10, and then suddenly he's been put in the Red Bull competing against Leclerc and Verstappen. Verstappen's just on another level in that Red Bull. He's really young, talented, maybe potentially could see a move to Mercedes or Ferrari. don't know, but yeah, I think mine's gonna have to be an Albon on that one.
All right, so we've got, what's that, 2 for Albon, 1 for Vettel so far. So, I mean,
Yeah,
if you guys, obviously, if you guys also have your own opinions about this, which I'm sure you do, let us know in the comments down below, or you can get in touch with us on the Discord or anything like that. And obviously now, with the F1 2021 regulations being delayed till 2022 for new cars, so, the ground effect coming back in a different form to how it was last time. But with all of that stuff coming back, what effect could it have on the 2021 season A? Because we're going to carry over the cars that we have now into 2021, as I'm sure most of you will be aware. But with the advantage that Mercedes seem to already have, only judging from testing, obviously you can't read too much into testing, but judging from that, it looks like Mercedes do have the fastest car on the grid. Could that see Lewis Hamilton, pick up a 7th and an 8th title before we even get to the new cars in 2022?
Dude, he could even beat Schumacher's record. I mean, what's Schumacher? Is it 7? Michael Schumacher
Yeah,
has
7 championships.
So
7.
he could potentially by 2021 be the record championship holder. Like
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's interesting because it could help him out very much in terms of that. But it would have been interesting because Mercedes were thinking about there was some news about Mercedes pulling out of F1 because of the new regulations. I don't know if any of you saw that, but it was
Yeah, I
interesting
was.
because they were thinking, because obviously they've got their setup now and they've got their car and they've got the fastest car and they don't want to change it. So it's interesting on how maybe it would affect the new rules will affect Mercedes in 2022.
And yeah, so that could have quite a impact on the stats record as well, and whether Mercedes do decide to pull out. I was never personally interested in the fact the point of Mercedes pulling out of the sport. I personally I can't see it happening. To be honest with you, they still have a
No, I
lot
don't think I can.
to gain with the sport. Obviously, the hybrid engines, they are still furthering electric technology in a sense that all the cars have batteries now. I don't know about UX Natty, how much you bought into the idea that Mercedes could depart at the end of next season before the regulations.
I don't think they. I don't. I'm not. I think it's unlikely they will, because of their dominance in previous years. But if they do decide to pull out, it'll be a very interesting target market for like the drivers and the teams, and whether you'll see lower teams like Renault or Racing Point, maybe McLaren even trying to sign Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri
Mm.
Bottas and see where they will end up. Whether they'll go to Formula E, try and get us another seat in Formula One, or whether we'll see a new team with the new
I
regulations
was
try
just
and
about to say that actually. I was just
come
about to
in.
say if Mercedes were to leave, would we see someone new come in? I mean, we've had many teams over the years. I mean, Lotus is a team that was rumored to come back and they never came back. I remember BMW were here for a few seasons. They left. I mean, we had Mana. Do you remember Mana Racing back in
Oh yeah.
2016?
Yeah, you got
They went. I think they went into administration. I believe they couldn't afford it no more, so they left. So it's interesting to see on how if Mercedes do leave, who would come in. I mean, there was supposed to be I mean, Aston Martin were trying to get engines together. There was all sorts
Porsche.
of talk between Porsche. Yeah, Porsche was trying to get in as well. Yeah, so be interesting to see on how that would work, and who would come in as another team.
Yeah, I believe there was some very, very quiet rumors, but talk of Penske possibly coming over from the States and buying out the Mercedes team, which, having Penske, if I say it right, sorry, in F1 as a team that's taken over that Mercedes operation, that'd be pretty cool, I think.
Mm.
Yeah, and
Very
so
interesting.
that actually brings us to the end of the story section of the podcast, as a bit of a shorter one for this episode, but that just gives me a chance to tell you about what we are planning for the future of this podcast. So from next episode, I can confirm that we will be having driver interviews. Now, these interviews won't be a part of the post-race interview section that was planned to go ahead. This is a completely independent series from all of the races that happen on Gavra Racing. If you would like to be involved in the podcast in that way, just drop me or Tiger or X Natty a personal message, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. We're also interested in setting up a Q&A, which Tiger Assassin who does a lot of work on the Twitter, Discord, and Instagram pages for
That's
Gavra
me.
Racing. That he's a social media guy. But if you're interested in getting a question answered or have a question for any three of us, just comment in the YouTube section down below, or go on to the Discord, the Twitter, or the Instagram to do so. And all of which I will find links and put them down below. And thank you all for listening.